today we would go through current lake levels and temperatures because we're nearing lake season. And I went down to Destin, Rosemary Beach actually this past weekend, and the water was so cold in the Gulf that it got me thinking, what are the current temperatures of the Georgia lakes? Like, can people go swimming? Because it's about to be May. It's warm enough to get out on a boat. So I decided to look into it. So let's talk about it. West Georgia and Metro Atlanta completely not in a drought whatsoever. The mountains and East Georgia, you see the yellow, that is dry. It's abnormally dry. And then over there towards Lake Hartwell and just north of Augusta, they are in a level 1 drought. You can see most of South Carolina is abnormally dry, but we're not in any sort of drought right now. And you can really see that reflected by the current lake levels. I mean, most of the lakes are at full pool. Lake Lanier is actually a foot above full pool, which is great. You want that level going into the summer because you guys know in the summer it gets really hot. We see those lake levels really burn off, okay? Allatoona at full pool. Hartwell's at full pool, even though Hartwell is technically in the drought area. They're at full pool. Burton is a foot below, but Burton is a controlled lake, so they'll probably fill that up towards the beginning of the summer. Oconee is a foot above full pool. We love that. Lake Sinclair's at full pool, and then West Point Lake is 2.5 feet below full pool. That's the only one I'm a little worried about or questioning. And I don't know much about West Point Lake. That's down there in Troup County. But otherwise, the lakes are really full pooled, which is great. They are still way too cold to go swimming. Look at Lake Burton sitting at 53 degrees up there in Raven County. Oh, chilly. I would have to imagine that other lakes like the Blue Ridge Lake, Lake Blue Ridge, Lake Chattooga, all those that are in the mountains are still in the low 50s. Lake Lanier, Lake Allatoona is sitting in the upper 50s. That is still cold. Hartwell, Lake Sinclair, Lake Oconee, West Point Lake, all in the low 60s. Oconee's actually at 64 degrees. That feels better than the 59 up at Lake Lanier. 5 degrees actually makes a big difference. But I would say it's not until the temperatures get into the upper 60s that it feels decent to swim in. And that probably will not happen for another month or so, okay? Now you're probably wondering, why do they cool so slowly and heat up so slowly, right? They're much slower to cool off when we get into the cold months, and they're much slower to warm up when we get into the warm months. It has to do with specific heat or heat capacity. Okay, so the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of a substance by 1 degree, that is the heat capacity, okay? So water has a much higher heat capacity, which means more heat is required in order to raise the temperature 1 degree. Meanwhile, air has a much lower heat capacity. That's why the air can fluctuate so much. So as we go through a day, just a typical day, and the air heats up to 75 degrees, right? From, let's just say, 50 at sunrise, 25 degrees difference. The water might only climb a degree or 2 through the heating of the day. Then when you get down to night, spring-like nights like we're having right now, where the temperatures can drop substantially into the mid-40s, right? You might only see that water lose a degree or 2. So really, right now, we see these temperatures between 60 to 65 degrees in the water, even though the air temperature can go 30 degrees difference in a day. And it has to do with the heat capacity, the specific heat of water, okay, which is very interesting. Now, looking ahead, what can we expect? When do we expect the water to actually warm up? Well, our long-range outlook for the temperatures this week and really through the end of the month, April 30th, which is, I think, Wednesday of next week, okay? We're looking at a 70-80% of above average air temperatures. So it's going to be warmer than average. Our average high is 74. We're going to be sitting in the upper 70s to the 80s through the end of the month. That should help warm up the lakes, okay? Then as we head towards early May, we may see some moderation of temperatures. There's still a slight chance of above average temperatures. So, and then if you want to look at the long-range outlook from April to June, there's a 40% chance of above average temperatures. So we're kind of looking to stay warm through the rest of the spring into the summer, which should help the water warm up pretty quickly from here on out, okay? In terms of our precipitation, this week and next week, we're looking at unseasonably wet weather, okay? In the summer months, that would cool off the lakes because the water, when it falls, is sitting at about the air temperature somewhere in the low 60s. But right now, that liquid water that falls from the sky is about the same temperature. It's in the low 60s. That won't really impact the temperature of the water, but it might impact the level of the lake water. So we're looking at about 1 inch to 2 inches of rain, especially in the mountains this week. That could help fill up some of the lakes still. And then early May, a below average rain is expected. And then April through June, we're expecting near normal rain. Okay, so I do not expect us to get into a drought situation through the end of April and into May, which is great news because we can get into droughts very quickly, you guys know, with the summer months. So that's all I got for you guys today, is just that little update on the lake levels and where they're sitting, where the temperatures are sitting. I'll probably do a lake update once a week once we get into the summer, but maybe once a month from here on out, so you guys can just get an update on when those temperatures start to get into the comfortable range. For right now, I would highly suggest you do not go swimming in any of the lakes unless you're wearing a wetsuit. Otherwise, you are going to be cold, all right? Okay, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We do have 2 first alert weather days for rain tomorrow and Wednesday. Courtney Jacobazi will have more on that coming up on Atlanta News First News at noon.